Hello, and welcome to Confident HR Conversations, the podcast designed to help you navigate challenges of communicating in English as an HR professional with confidence and clarity. I'm Alena Konečná, and I'm glad you're here. My guest today is someone who helps people navigate conversations with more clarity, confidence, and care. Hana Svabikova is a communication trainer and facilitator specializing in nonviolent communication. Through her work, she helps individuals and teams handle difficult discussions, resolve conflicts, and create more meaningful connections, both at work and in life. Currently, she is based at the Institute of Nonviolent Communication in the Czech Republic. Hanka, welcome to Confident HR Conversations. Thank you for joining our podcast, and I hope that we will dive into the nonviolent communication together. In recent years, nonviolent communication has become quite a name, I think, or maybe it's just my impression. But still, for those of the listeners that maybe don't have a personal experience with nonviolent communication, could you explain a little bit the main principles and what it is actually about?
Hello, it's a pleasure to be here. Nonviolent communication, or NVC as we say, was developed by a psychologist. He's called Marshall Rosenberg. And at its heart, it's about connecting with ourselves and other people. That's important for me, that it's not just about how we say things, it's also about some kind of approach, I would say. And we can connect through empathy and also honesty. There are these two sides, I think. And it's about finding a way how to fulfill my needs, but also needs of you if I'm with you in the conversation, or of other people being in that conversation, because we can be a team or something. Instead of reacting, I would say, out of a habit or maybe out of blame or something, I try to ask what's alive in me or in you right now in that moment, right? What are the needs behind our feelings? It's really not about being nice, which is a common mistake people think about when we see. And it's also not about avoiding conflict, which is also a common thought. Sometimes people are, through the workshop, they start to say a non-conflict communication instead of non-violent, because they think it's about not having conflict, which is exact opposite, I would say. It's about staying connected even when emotions are intense. That would be the definition for me, even though there are many definitions and VC is taught differently in different places. But usually it's based on 4 steps. Maybe that would be nice to say. It's observations, not our judgments of what we see, but what we really observe. Then feelings, needs, and requests. And from that, I would emphasize needs, that part, because NVC says that they are universal for all of us, which is really great to have a common thing to talk about. And what universal needs mean, that's like I can understand or I can imagine what it means that you long for closeness or that you long for cooperation or trust. So I can understand that. I experienced that in past also. When we talk about needs, it's more or easier to connect on this level. And the second part, really important for me personally, are our feelings, because they are showing impact of what the need, or if the need is fulfilled or unfulfilled, which is really great to have something I can observe in my body that, well, there is something showing that I would long for something. And I can feel it really in my body. Every feeling is somewhere in the body.
Thank you. Thank you for walking us through the basics of the NVC, Hanka. So what I'm hearing, it's a lot about observing what is instead of focusing on maybe our assumptions on stories, which is a very human thing to do, right? We make assumptions, we try to read people's minds.
And I think like the brain works like that. When there were tigers in the jungle, so we need to think, well, that's not safe. I should run. But now my email is not the tiger. So, or the person in the conversation, I can ask, what did you really mean by that? What you said?
That's such an important piece of information because our body reacts to stress in a similar, right? But now in our time, we have the luxury of taking the moment, saying like, is this really how I want to react? Is this really what it? And it's interesting that you mentioned also that it's observing ourselves first in the emotions of ourselves. Is that what you meant?
Yes, and really thanks for noticing this part, because sometimes nonviolent communication is, people think that it's about really what we say to the other person. But for me personally, like 80% of all that is about noticing what's in me or what do I need. And it really works for me every day to just be oriented with my feelings and needs. Yeah, that's important part.
Excellent. Excellent. So now one thing is a theory, and I have to say that nonviolent communication does have a reputation that it's quite structured or there's a specific way how to say these things. I'm curious, getting a little bit more specific, how can HR professionals who do handle challenging situations like getting feedback, handling events, or resolving conflicts, dealing with managers, leadership, etc., how can those principles help them?
Well, we have to say that it depends on context. In every company, it will be different. There are some principles that can really help HR professionals to know so they can observe the company better and make some assumptions, but in a good way. I mean, I observe something and I can think about, oh, what's happening there? What can I suggest to do or something? And then I ask if I'm correct. So that's the different assumptions really works for us, but we want to be sure that we are not working just with them. But back to the question, well, NVC helps to separate observation from judgment, as we said, and speak from a place for empathy. That's one part, to really try to understand what's alive in people, what are these feelings and needs. And it also emphasizes care about the impact of what we are saying to each other and stuff. That's more about the communication itself, but then NVC can help on the, I would say, like systemic level, meaning we can think about what are our needs in our everyday jobs we do. For example, we have some team roles and my job is connected to your job because I do the first part and then maybe I'm some engineer preparing some products and then I give it to marketing and they need to have it sold somehow. And we need to discuss how we will do that. What will be the result of my work? That maybe the marketing people will think it's not enough how you do that and how we discuss what we need from each other and how to set up the agreements about how we work together. And it can also be built on needs. And that's better than just on our personal approach, meaning that we have our favorite manners how to do things. I would like you to be always on time, to have the results like this, da. But that's my approach. And maybe the other person has some need that's saying, well, I need more time, or it's really important for me to cooperate on that. That's a need for cooperation. Or I long for some clarity because I need to do it myself and I'm not really sure what the results should be for you. So it's better for you and stuff. So we can use the needs or the nonviolent communication also for that. That's really important for me because the communication is just something that helps to go deeper in relationships and processes in the workplace. Well, I can mention some common places or spaces or situations.
If I understood it right, you're making the distinction between the needs, which generally speaking, they're understood as something universal, like everyone can relate to those needs. Everyone has some level of needs for safety, collaboration, etc. But there might be different ways how we all fulfill our needs. And that's where the conflicts might arise or miscommunication might arise. So I just wanted to clarify if that's what you're talking about when you're speaking about going deeper into the needs and therefore making a connection between different working styles when it comes to different departments, people, etc.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much for summing it up. They are called strategies, and we see like the ways how we fulfill our needs. And usually we have the conflict on the level of strategies that we want to fulfill our needs differently. And what we want to do, and we see, is how to work with the conflict. I'm really glad we are walking through this topic now. We want to ask each other what are needs behind the behavior we have or actions we want to do, and think about, okay, is there any other way, any other strategy we can do so both our needs are fulfilled in the same moment. And not every time all needs can be fulfilled, but they can be listened to, which is really like the thing that companies should do. And I find it really helpful building long-term relationships with employees because people want to be heard.
Okay, so even acknowledgement and maybe saying that maybe at this point it's not possible to fulfill the need completely.
But we see you.
Okay. And you did also mention, Hanka, that you actually started to work. It's not that long ago since you started to work in the companies, right? I feel that in the companies, this is still quite a new thing, but wrong. But now you also do workshops in companies. So you meet with people, you train them to use NVC in their work life. So maybe let's now do a little demonstration, or let's think about some concrete examples where we can reformulate some feedback or some things that sometimes the leaders, HR professionals, or managers need to say to employees. How can they do that with NVC?
Yeah, let's do that.
First one is around performance. It's very, very typical, right? A manager needs to say to the employee that the performance is not up to par. There are some misgivings. I mean, in the end, it's not as good as it's supposed to be. The expectations are not met. A manager without any empathy might just say, you really don't do a good job. Your performance. So how can this be done better with NVC?
Instead of saying maybe you're not performing well or your performance is not sufficient or something, which sounds to me like some personal judgment, we might say, over the past month, I've noticed deadlines were missed on 3 occasions. That's an observation. What really happened, what the camera in the room would see. Then we express how we feel and what we need. So that can sound like, I feel concerned because I need reliability, maybe. Finally, we make clear, respectful requests. This way, the message is still honest and firm, but is grounded in connection rather than the blame or fear. That's important. And for example, it can be, would you be willing to set up a short weekly check-in so we can track progress together? Or would you suggest something else? I'm just really concerned, so I want to offer some space so we can talk about it. So this can be the way. I really care about which impact it has on the person. So I usually ask also something like, how is it for you to hear that? Like first, before we go to how we will do that, firstly, I ask, do you understand what I mean? Like really, how is it for you? How do you feel now?
Thank you for walking us through those 4 steps, step by step. Thank you for mentioning at the beginning that there's no single way to do that correctly, right? And I think it can help everyone to realize that they really don't have to follow like a specific structure, but it's more about having those steps clear for themselves before they initiate a conversation. Because when we start a conversation, it's much more difficult to focus on our own emotions. And I also like how the request at the end doesn't have to be already clear. We don't have to have already the answer, the solution, but it can be more of an invitation of, so how do you see this situation? Maybe there was a misunderstanding, or maybe you have another idea. So it's this invitation and openness at the end.
Yeah.
Right. Last situation is about kind of an atmosphere in the team when a member of the team tends to become more emotional than others, and it may impact the atmosphere in the team. So as a manager approaching the situation, what can I say instead of saying bluntly, every time you have a meeting, you just get so emotional and it's very distracting?
Well, it happens a lot. I would probably say something like, in our recent conversations, I've noticed that when certain topics come up, I think that emotions run high, like raised voices, sometimes tears, sometimes shouting. That's like emotions running high, I think. And I feel somehow overwhelmed and unsure how to respond in those moments. It makes me pretty like, what should I do? What's happening? I would like to have more calm, but more like clarity on these meetings so we can really communicate effectively with you, because it's not really understandable for me what I can do for you in that moment. So we can make decisions together. Would you be willing to take a short break when things feel tense, maybe? Because it can help both of us, and then we can both stay grounded conversation. But whatever helps you, I just want to understand you more.
Great. Well, I think what is important for me here is that you're really stuck to the observation part. That it's not about, oh, you're crying all the time or you're so sad whenever we mention whatever. You really describe what is happening and neutrally talking about the emotions and the impact it has on the meeting.
Yeah, I think it really helps to not get to the defensive position. I also usually use something like framing. I would maybe start a conversation like, I want to open up something that can help both of us. Maybe I won't say it so it will be really comfortable or something, but I just want to open it up because I care about you. So sometimes just the framing also, can you give me 2 minutes to explain that? Because I'm not sure if I will be really understandable. I want you to know yeah, that sometimes helps also.
So making sure that we set up the conversation in a way that everyone is kind of ready to listen and right expectations. Well, thank you for sharing these practical examples of how NVC can look like in concrete, specific situations. What would be your advice to people, to HR professionals, or everyone listening who wants to start applying nonviolent communication in their communication? They work in a company where this is not a common way of communicating. So, what can be the little thing they can do?
I think the basic level, when there's nothing like that, the simple but powerful shift is to really have space where we listen to each other. Because when we have normal meetings and we start to talk about results and how we, I don't know, support our clients or something, or the processes, it's not really about the cooperation, even though it would help the most to serve the clients. So the space where we listen to each other needs. Not every time every need can be fulfilled, as we said, but it can be listened to. So I call it to have a meetings for people. The basic tip is to have check-ins. Just every time a meeting begins, I can ask everyone what they are bringing to the table today, meaning, how do you feel today? If you have anything urgent, if your back or teeth hurts, so we know that your face expression is not boredom, but it's pain. When people talk at the beginning of the meeting, they will then feel more comfortable to share something which is not maybe that easy to share or something. And we want to make sure that they are really listened to, that colleagues are not talking to each other while the one is sharing something important. Another level maybe is then to start bringing up the feelings and needs. I would like to say that it's not easy, but as HR or as leader that is interested in this topic, we can start offering feelings and needs as a part of what we talk about, call it out loud. Like, I would say modeling the approach. For instance, if someone is frustrated, you might ask, or I think they are frustrated, I can ask, is it for you about fairness or clarity? Like, I can offer the needs. And even I'm not saying it right, this mindset changes how I listen, and the person can redirect to the conversation. For example, are you feeling overwhelmed because clarity is important for you? I can ask, and it can open the door to mutual understanding and maybe even reduce the defensiveness.
What I'm hearing is making the space to talk about needs and feelings and observations more openly, more transparently, more explicitly, and normalizing these kind of conversations by including them in meetings like those initial check-ins. Is there anything else that you'd like to add on that?
What really I find helpful is to have mechanisms for what's happening when we have the conflict. So we know in the team when something happened at first, it's really different in every team I meet, but usually it's something like we have an approach how we want to talk to each other when we feel tense. And then when we are not able to manage it, like the two of us, then we know that we want to go to the leader or to some specific person that's like the mediator. Somehow we have described what we do when it happens. And it maybe sounds again like a structure, but it really helps for these moments when we get stuck for months that we don't know what to do. So we can have a mechanism for that. What I can maybe emphasize is that we really should try to give like the positive feedback or appraisal, like evaluation to colleagues. And this can be used for that. Like you are not just saying good work, you are more like saying when you sent me the preparation for that meeting, even though you didn't need it to do that, it really helped me because then I felt supported. And thanks to that, we won that client. So really, I wanted to thank you for that support. It sometimes emphasizes like it's better than good work. It's more like this really helps me.
Yeah, so it's like coming back to making an observation instead of judgment, right? Like being very specific about what is working and why it's working instead of just saying, yeah, as you said, good job.
Yeah, and again, connecting it to need, like it helped me because it fulfilled some needs.
So adding this extra layer of context with the person. Well, thank you so much, Hanka, for diving with us and guiding us through this world of NVC. And I forgot to mention at the beginning that I believe that this year, the NVC Institute in the Czech Republic is organizing the first festival of nonviolent communication.
It happened, and actually, like 2 days before, it sold out. So now we are really glad that it's happening, but it's not that easy to get there now. But you can be on the waiting list if you want.
Hopefully, this is not a one-off event and part of a new tradition. So next year, our listeners can visit join the festival.
Yeah, I hope so.
Perfect. And then to close our episode, how people reach out to you, Hanka, if they want to maybe learn more about NVC or maybe even bring NVC to their companies?
Well, you are warmly invited to connect with me through website. We can maybe link somewhere on YouTube. I'm also on Instagram and LinkedIn, so you can find me and text me or whatever you need if you need some tips or something. But public workshops you can find on the website of Institute of Nonviolent Communication, so you can look for that. And yeah, we offer regularly workshops for individuals, teams, organizations, both in person and online. And like last month, we started to do also like content newsletters. I find them really great now. Like there are some good tips. So if you want just to have once 3 weeks or 4 weeks, some content that can be a place to connect with us. So these are the options.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I'm going to put all the links in the description, of course. So thank you for joining us today. Hanka, it was lovely to talk to you and looking forward to seeing you around again in the next opportunity.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure. Thanks. If you are an HR professional who wants a safe space to practice speaking in English, join our Confident HR Speaker community. We meet twice a month to discuss real HR topics, expand our vocabulary, and gain the confidence to express ourselves. Plus, you'll be supported and inspired by a group of other HR professionals who share your struggles and goals. Check the link in the description to sign up. Bye-bye.